I used to believe that silence was empty, that if a room was quiet, nothing was happening. I was wrong. Silence is full. It is full of things we are afraid to say, full of memories we cannot let go of, and full of people we miss, even if we have never met them. My name is Emily. I am 36 years old. I repair old books for a living. My hands are always dry from paper dust, and my clothes usually smell of glue and vanilla. It is a quiet life, a life of small, careful movements. I fix the spines of books that other people have broken. I tape together pages that have been torn by careless fingers. I suppose, in a way, I have always been trying to fix things that are falling apart, including myself. This story, my story, begins not with a look or a touch, but with a piece of paper. It was a Tuesday in November. The kind of Tuesday that feels like it will never end. The sky over the city was a bruised purple, heavy with rain that refused to fall. I was sitting in my usual spot at the back of the university library, hidden behind a tower of encyclopedias. I wasn't working. I was hiding. I had just ended a relationship that had dragged on for 3 years too long. We hadn't fought. We had just faded, like ink left in the sun. He packed his bags quietly, and I watched him go, feeling absolutely nothing. That terrified me. The nothingness. I reached for a book on the shelf next to me. It wasn't one I was repairing. It was just a random selection, a distraction. Persuasion, by Jane Austen. A classic. I opened it expecting to see the familiar printed text. Instead, a folded sheet of blue-lined paper slipped out and fluttered to the floor. I picked it up. It wasn't a bookmark. It was a letter. The handwriting was sharp, jagged, hurried. It looked like the writing of a man who was thinking faster than his hand could move. I should have put it back. I should have respected the privacy of whoever left it there. But I am a reader. I read everything. I read the backs of cereal boxes. I read the ingredients on shampoo bottles. I couldn't help myself. I unfolded the blue paper. To whoever finds this. The letter began. My heart did a strange little flip. It felt like he was speaking directly to me. I am sitting in this library because I have nowhere else to go where the noise stops. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that today, I realized I have forgotten the sound of my own laugh. I work in a glass tower downtown. I make money. I have a car that drives smooth and fast. And yet, looking at these books, I feel like a ghost. I am writing this because I need to prove to myself that I exist. If you find this, please, just know that someone was here, that I was here. And if you are lonely too, know that you are sharing that loneliness with me. We are alone together. It was signed simply. I sat there for a long time. The library lights hummed overhead. Outside, the rain finally began to fall, tapping against the tall windows. I read the letter again, and again. We are alone together. That phrase pierced me. It was exactly what I had been feeling for months, years even. Surrounded by people, yet completely isolated in my own experience. I looked around the library. Students were typing on laptops. An old man was asleep in an armchair. No one looked like a M. I took a pen from my pocket. My hand was trembling. Why was I doing this? It was crazy. It was childish. But it felt necessary. I turned the blue paper over. The back was blank. Dear M, I wrote. My handwriting was rounder, softer than his. I found you. You exist. I am sitting in the same library. Perhaps in the same chair you sat in. I repair broken books, but I don't know how to repair the silence in my own apartment. I haven't laughed in a long time either. But today, reading your note, I felt a spark. Thank you for being here. You are not a ghost. I signed it, E. I folded the paper back into its original creases. I placed it inside the book, exactly where I found it. I put the book back on the shelf. My heart was hammering against my ribs as I walked out into the rain. I felt foolish. He would never come back. He would never see it. It was a bottle thrown into the ocean. But 2 days later, I was back. I couldn't stay away. I walked to the shelf, my breath catching in my throat. The book was there. I pulled it down. I opened it. The blue paper was gone. In its place was a crisp, white index card. I gasped, a small sound that vanished in the quiet room. I snatched the card and hurried to my table, hiding behind the encyclopedias again. Dear E. The white card read. I came back. I didn't think I would, but the silence in my apartment was too loud. I checked the book. I didn't expect a reply. When I saw your writing, I don't know how to describe it. It felt like a hand reaching out of the dark. You repair books. That sounds beautiful. You save history. I destroy it, in a way. I'm an architect, but lately, I feel like I just build cages for people to work in. Tell me, E. What is the oldest thing you have ever held in your hands? Tell me about your world. And just like that, the door opened. We didn't know each other's names. We didn't know faces, ages, or addresses. We were just E and M. Two voices in the dark. Two ghosts haunting the same library shelf. I wrote back immediately. I told him about a Bible from the 1700s I was restoring. How the leather smelled of smoke and centuries. I told him about the way the light hit my workbench in the afternoon. I told him things I had never told my ex-boyfriend in 3 years. He wrote back the next day. He told me about the pressure of his job, the coldness of the steel and glass he worked with. He told me about his wife, who had passed away 5 years ago, and how he still sometimes made coffee for 2 in the morning before he remembered. That was the hook. That vulnerability. He wasn't trying to impress me. He wasn't trying to date me. He was just being. And because he was invisible, I could be invisible too. I could be honest. For the first time in my life, I wasn't performing. I wasn't trying to be the cool girlfriend or the competent employee. I was just a soul, pouring itself onto paper. Weeks turned into a month. The book, Persuasion, became our mailbox. We moved it to the bottom shelf to make it less conspicuous. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I would go. Sometimes the letter was short. Just a quote or an observation about the weather. Sometimes it was pages long, written on napkins, notebook paper, anything he could find. I began to fall in love. Not with a man, but with a mind. With the way he saw the world. He noticed the way puddles reflected the neon signs. He noticed the sadness in the eyes of the subway conductor. He was deeply, painfully observant, just like me. But fear grew alongside the affection. What if we met? What if the magic broke? Reality is harsh. Reality has awkward pauses and bad breath and disappointing appearances. On paper, we were perfect. In person, we might be strangers. I remember one letter vividly. It was January. The city was frozen solid. E. He wrote, I walked past a woman today who was wearing a red scarf. For a second, I thought, is that her? I wanted to stop her. I wanted to ask. But then I realized I don't even know the color of your hair. I don't know the sound of your voice, and yet, you know me better than my own brother does. Is this madness? Or is this the only sane thing left in my life? I wrote back. It isn't madness, Em. It's the only place where we are safe. Please, let's not spoil it. Let's not meet. Let's just be ink and paper. It's enough. I lied. It wasn't enough. I wanted to know him. I wanted to see the hands that wrote those jagged, hurried letters. But I was a coward. I was 36. And I felt like my time for fairy tales was over. I was protecting myself from the inevitable disappointment. Then came the letter that changed everything. It was mid-February. Valentine's Day had just passed, a holiday we both ignored in our correspondence. I went to the shelf. The book was there. I opened it. The letter was heavy, thick paper. Dear E, it started. The handwriting was shaky this time. I have to tell you something. I haven't been honest. I told you I build cages. That's true. But the reason I started writing to you, the reason I came to the library that first day, was because I had just come from the doctor. My stomach dropped. The library spun around me. I am sick, E, it's my eyes. A degenerative condition. It's slow, but it's happening. My peripheral vision is fading. Eventually, the center will go too. I am an architect who is losing the ability to see the world. That is why I write to you. That is why I ask you to describe the light on your workbench, or the color of the old leather. I am hoarding your words. I am building a library in my mind of things I can keep when the lights go out. You are my eyes, E. You are the only beautiful thing I have seen in years. I sat in the chair and wept. I didn't care who saw me. Tears splattered onto the table, onto his letter. He wasn't just a lonely man. He was a man racing against the dark, and I had been keeping him at arm's length. I grabbed my pen. I wrote furiously. M. I am here. I am not going anywhere. I will describe everything to you. I will be your eyes. I will write you the world. But we have to meet. Please. I don't care about the awkwardness. I don't care about reality. I want to see you while you can still see me. I left the letter. I waited. 2 days passed. I went back. The letter was still there. Unread. 4 days. Still there. A week. 2 weeks. He was gone. The silence that followed was worse than the silence before. Before, the silence was just empty space. Now, it was a heavy, suffocating weight. It was the presence of an absence. I went to the library every single day. I checked the book, Persuasion. So many times the spine began to crack. Ironic for a woman who fixes books. But the white index cards never appeared. My letter, begging him to meet, sat there, gathering dust, mocking me. Eventually, I took it back. I couldn't bear to leave it there for a stranger to find. I went through the stages of grief. First, denial. He's just busy. He's traveling for work. Then, anger. How could he do this? How could he open me up, make me vulnerable, and then vanish? Then, the terrible, cold fear. What if something happened to him? What if his eyes got worse? What if he's in a hospital? I had no way to find him. I didn't know his name. M. That was it. Do you know how many Michaels, Matthews, Marks, and Davids with middle names, starting with M, there are in a city of 5 million people? I read his letters over and over. I analyzed them like a detective. I looked for clues I might have missed. He was an architect. He worked in a glass tower downtown. He had a car. He was a widower. His wife died 5 years ago. I started walking downtown during my lunch breaks. I would stand on street corners, looking up at the skyscrapers, wondering which one was his cage. I looked at the faces of men in suits. Was that him? The tall one with the graying hair. The one with the sad shoulders. It was hopeless. I was searching for a ghost in a machine. Spring came. The rain stopped, and the trees in the park exploded into green. It felt insulting. How could the world be so bright when my internal world had gone dark again? I stopped going to the library. It hurt too much. I focused on my work. I restored a collection of Victorian medical journals. I glued, I stitched, I pressed. My hands were steady, but my mind was chaos. One evening in May, I was walking home from work. I decided to take a different route, through the old district of the city. I wanted to avoid the park, where couples walked hand in hand. I walked past an art gallery, a bakery, and then a small, dusty antique shop. I stopped. In the window of the antique shop, there was a sketch. It was framed simply. It was a charcoal drawing of a building. Not a modern building. A cathedral. But it wasn't a traditional cathedral. It was made of glass and light, soaring upwards. Impossible and beautiful. It wasn't the drawing that stopped me. It was the signature in the corner. A sharp, jagged M. I stared at it. The line quality. The way the M was formed. Like two mountains crashing into each other. It was identical to the signature on the letters. My heart started to beat in my throat. I pushed open the door of the shop. A bell chimed. The air smelled of beeswax and old wood. An elderly woman was behind the counter, polishing a silver teapot. "Excuse me?" I said. My voice sounded rusty. "The drawing in the window. The cathedral. Who is the artist?" The woman looked up, adjusting her glasses. "Oh, that. It's not a professional piece. A local man brought it in a few weeks ago. Said he was clearing out his studio. Getting rid of things he couldn't use anymore." "Do you have a name?" I asked, gripping the edge of the counter. "Please. It's very important." She hesitated. I don't usually give out information about sellers. But he seemed very sad. A nice man, tall. Dark hair, losing it a bit. He had trouble seeing the receipt I gave him. "Please," I whispered. "Marcus," she said. "His name is Marcus Thorne. He left a card in case I sold it. For the payment." She reached under the counter and pulled out a business card. Marcus Thorne. Thorne and Associates Architecture. I stared at the card. It was real. He was real. "Do you want to buy the sketch?" the woman asked. "Yes," I said. "I want to buy it. And I need the address on this card." I didn't go to his office. It was 600 p.m. He wouldn't be there. I went to the address listed online for his residence. It was a townhouse in a quiet, leafy neighborhood. Not a glass tower. His sanctuary. I stood across the street for 20 minutes. I was terrified. What if he didn't want to see me? What if he stopped writing because he didn't like me anymore? What if the sickness was a lie to let me down gently? No. I knew truth when I read it. The fear in his letters was real. I crossed the street. I walked up the steps. I rang the bell. I waited. No answer. I rang again. I heard movement inside. Slow, heavy steps. The door opened. A man stood there. He was exactly as I had imagined, and yet completely different. He was taller than I thought. His shoulders were broad but stooped, as if carrying a weight. His hair was dark, peppered with gray. He was wearing a thick sweater, even though it was May. But it was his eyes that broke me. They were a piercing, pale blue. But they were unfocused. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking through me, past me. "Yes?" he asked. His voice. It was deep, resonant. The voice of the letters. "Who is it?" "I'm not expecting anyone." I couldn't speak. My throat closed up. "Hello," he said, a trace of irritation in his voice. "Is anyone there?" He started to close the door. "It's E," I whispered. He froze. His hand gripped the doorframe so hard his knuckles turned white. He didn't move. He didn't breathe. "E?" he asked, his voice barely a sound. "Emily." I hadn't told him my full name, but he had guessed. Or maybe E just stood for everything. "It's me," I said. "I found you." He opened the door wider. He looked devastatingly vulnerable. I can't see you very well," he said. "Just a shape, a shadow against the light." "That's okay," I said, stepping closer. "I'm here." "Why did you come?" he asked. I stopped writing. "I let you go." "You didn't let me go," I said. "You ran away." "Because you were scared. I'm going blind." "Emily," he said roughly, turning his face away. "I am losing the world. I didn't want you to be saddled with a man who is half a person. I wanted you to have someone whole." "You idiot," I said, the tears finally spilling over. "You think I fell in love with your eyesight. I fell in love with your mind. I fell in love with the man who noticed the red scarf in the rain. That man is still there." He stood there, trembling. He looked like a man standing on the edge of a cliff, afraid to step back, afraid to jump. I took a step forward. I reached out and took his hand. His skin was warm. "Real. You asked me once," I said, to describe the oldest thing I ever held. He nodded slowly. "It's not a book," I said. "It's this moment. It feels like we've been waiting for this moment for 1,000 years. It feels ancient." He squeezed my hand. He pulled me closer. He lifted his other hand and touched my face. His fingers traced my jaw, my cheekbones, my eyebrows. He was reading my face like Braille. He was mapping me. "You're crying," he said softly. "Yes, don't cry," he whispered. "I can see you. I can see you better than I've seen anything in years." We didn't kiss. Not then. We just stood in the doorway, holding each other, while the city noise faded away around us. It wasn't a movie scene. There was no swelling music. There was just the smell of rain on the pavement and the feeling of his heartbeat against my palm. We went inside. His house was full of books. But the lights were dim. He didn't need them anymore. We sat in his living room for hours. We talked. We talked until our voices were hoarse. We filled in the gaps of the letters. He told me about the diagnosis, the anger, the despair. I told him about my search, the sketch in the window. "I drew that sketch from memory," he said. "It was the cathedral I wanted to build. But I never will." "You built something better," I told him. "You built a bridge to me." He smiled then. A real smile. It transformed his face. It made him look 10 years younger. "I thought my life was ending," he said. "I thought the book was closing." "No," I said, taking his hand again. "That was just the end of a chapter. This is part 2. That was 3 years ago. Life did not magically become perfect. This is a realistic story, remember. Marcus lost his sight completely about 6 months after we met. It was a hard time. There were days of rage, days of depression, days where he threw things against the wall because he couldn't find his way to the bathroom. I didn't fix him. You can't fix people like you fix books. I just stayed. I held the pieces while he glued himself back together. I learned to be his eyes, but not in the way I thought. I didn't just describe things. I learned to see the world differently myself. I learned that touch and sound and smell are just as vibrant as color. We listen to audiobooks together. We walk in the park, and I describe the changing seasons. But he tells me about the shift in the wind and the smell of the damp earth before I even notice them. He stopped being an architect of buildings. He started teaching. He teaches architectural theory at the university. He teaches students how to feel space, not just look at it. He is brilliant. His students adore him. And me, I still repair books. But I write now too. I wrote our story. We got married last autumn. It was a small ceremony in the library. Yes, at that library. The librarian allowed us to do it after hours. We stood right next to the shelf where Persuasion used to sit. When it came time for the vows, Marcus didn't need notes. He turned his face toward my voice. He looked at me with those pale, unseeing eyes that somehow see everything. "Emily," he said, "I used to think I was writing letters to a stranger. I thought I was throwing messages into the void. But I realize now that I was writing to my future. I was writing to the part of myself I hadn't met yet. You are not just my eyes. You are my vision. You are the ink in my pen. I love you, in the dark and in the light." I cried. Everyone cried. Even the grumpy security guard wiped his eyes. Sometimes, I think about what would have happened if I hadn't picked up that book. If I had just ignored the blue paper. If I had been 5 minutes later and someone else had found it. It scares me, the fragility of it. But then Marcus will reach for me in the middle of the night, his hand finding mine unerringly in the dark, and I realize something. It wasn't an accident. We think we are wandering through life randomly, bumping into people by chance. But I don't believe that anymore. I believe there are invisible threads connecting us to the people we are meant to know. We pull on them without realizing it. We leave notes in books. We walk down specific streets. We make choices that seem small but are actually monumental. The universe is a giant library, and we are all just stories waiting to be read by the right person. Yesterday, I was cleaning out the attic. I found a box of our old letters. The blue paper, the napkins, the index cards. I sat on the floor and read them again. They felt different now. They weren't desperate cries from lonely people anymore. They were the prologue to a love story that is still being written. Marcus came into the room. He heard the rustle of paper. "What are you reading?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe. "Use," I said. He smiled and walked over, sitting beside me on the floor. He didn't ask me to read them aloud. He remembered every word. "You know," he said softly, "I'm glad I got lost that day in the library." "Me too," I said. He kissed my forehead. Read me the part about the rain again. I picked up the very first letter. The blue one. "I am sitting in this library because I have nowhere else to go where the noise stops," I read. His head rested on my shoulder. Outside, the rain began to tap against the roof, a familiar, comforting rhythm. We are not alone. We are not ghosts. We are here. We are real. And if you are listening to this, if you are feeling lonely, if you are sitting in a room thinking that your silence is empty, please listen to me. Open a book. Write a note. Look up. Your story is out there. The invisible thread is already tied to your finger. You just have to follow the tug. Because sometimes, the love of your life is just a page turn away. And sometimes, in the margins of a used book, in the space between the lines, you find the life you were always meant to live. Believe in the hidden things. Believe in the ink. Believe that you are being read, even when you feel invisible. The end.